Greetings and welcome. My name is Aaron Craig with Let'sLearnThisTogether.com, the best place to learn game design and development with GameMaker Studio 2. Check out my website for my 3-course bundle to go from beginner to expert in no time. In today's tutorial, we're going to pick up right where we left off in the last one. So we just learned how to do a smooth follow effect by taking control of the camera. And now we're going to do a zoom in and out effect. So this is going to be just changing the size of the camera little by little, but I'm going to be adding on some extra stuff from where I originally found this project to make sure that when we zoom in and zoom out, the values stay, I guess, what I would call reasonable. So we're not going to be able to see outside of the room, we're not going to be able to see things that we're not supposed to, and it's not going to be all weird when we zoom in and zoom out without the extra things that I added in. But that all being said, we're going to make a zoom in and zoom out effect. I hope you're excited, because it was pretty cool. So let's dive in. So what we're going to tackle now is being able to zoom in and out. But I just wanted to give another shout out. If you're following along, you've seen this already. But this is inspired by GameMaker Station Matthew, his video smooth camera tutorial pan and zoom. So I'm using a lot of the stuff he had in there. So check him out if you want to see other stuff from him. Now, I am going to be changing a fair bit of what he did in that video because I found that his zooming in and out was problematic for a couple different reasons. The first one was that when you zoomed out of your room, you saw the outside of the room. So you saw some blank space over here, which can look really odd and really bad if you don't want that. The other thing was that if you zoomed out enough, then you would eventually actually skew your room. So right now I have a 16:9 camera, but if I zoom out, then it could actually mess up the proportions of it. Or if you zoom in, you can zoom in indefinitely down to a single pixel, which doesn't look very good either. So I had to add in a bunch of other stuff. Now, if you're following along for the first time, you can download this project in the description below, but you also don't necessarily need to. All you have to do is create a camera like this. You don't even have to have macros, but if you set up some data here, then just make sure that you've got your views set, and everything else we're doing will be able to just follow along with that. You don't have to have the smooth follow at all. All right, so I'm going to come over here after our smooth move, and what I'm going to do is set up the ability to zoom in and out. And we're going to do that with the mouse wheel. Now, if you don't have a mouse wheel, then that's kind of unfortunate. Otherwise, you'll be fine. If you don't have a mouse wheel, you can find anything else to do this. You can just use the up and arrow keys. You can use backspace. It doesn't matter. All you have to do is set something so that you know which way they're supposed to be zooming in and out. So the way we're going to do it is I'm going to say var wheel equals mouse wheel down minus mouse wheel up. And what this does is it returns true if mouse wheel is down or true if mouse wheel is up. Because the mouse wheel can only go one direction, this is either going to be 1, 0, or -1. And we're going to use that to our advantage. And I'm going to say if wheel doesn't equal 0, then wheel gets multiplied by 0.1, which is going to essentially equal 10%. So every time we go up or down, it's going to not equal 0. We're going to multiply the 1 or the -1 value by 0.1, and then we're going to use that to go up or down inside of our game, zooming in and out. And before we get too much further inside of here, we need to actually change some of the variables that we have up here. Right now we're using camera width and height for both the target X and target Y. But now that we're actually going to be changing the width and the height of the camera by zooming in and out, we need to actually set these as variables that we get so we can alter them. So up here, this is going to be for zooming in and out. We're going to have one called camera width with a lowercase c, and that's going to be equal to the function camera get view width. And we pass in our camera. So now, instead of a fixed value from our macro, we're actually going to get the width of the camera, which can change when we zoom in or out every single frame. That way we always have it correct. And then we also need the height here as well. Camera get view height global.camera. And then we need to replace these which I can do fairly easily by just changing the uppercase to a lowercase. We don't need to change camera speed at all though. So that's all we need to do up here. Now I'm going to add some enters down here. I'm going to increase the size just a little bit so we can see better. And now we can actually go through and start doing the zoom in and out. So first we need to figure out how much we want to add. And we're going to have some local variables here. It's going to be called add width. It's going to be equal to our camera width times our wheel. And the same thing will go for the height. Camera height times wheel. So we're multiplying it by a certain amount, and we can do that just each time going further and further. We just need to know how much to do. And this add width and height, it can be a negative, which is fine, because we're actually, when you add a negative, it's still subtracting. So this can be a positive or a negative depending on which one the wheel actually is. Now we're going to say camera width plus equal add width and camera height plus equal add height. Now, doing that, we are actually adjusting how much we can see inside of our game. So then all we actually have to do is come down here where we're applying changes and just set camera, set view size. So the position is when we were moving around. The size now is going to be how much we can see. And we have a variable camera width and camera height. Now we need to do a lot more than this if we want to make sure we don't see outside of the room and the proportions stay the same. But to test it out, this is all we actually need to do. So now if I zoom out, we can actually do that. Now I can zoom out pretty much indefinitely, and you can start to see that there's an issue here. I'm not actually focused on the player, and I can see way too much of the room. If I zoom back in, it comes in on the player, but then I can zoom in forever, and there's this weird pulling to the right and then pulling to the left whenever we zoom in and out. So yeah, it works, but it doesn't look very good. So now let's make it look better. So what I want to do is clamp these values. So clamping zoom. So our camera width is going to be equal to a clamped value of, well, it is being set, and then the camera width divided by 2 is the minimum, and the room width is the maximum. Now this divided by 2 is just something I came up with. You can definitely play around with that and see what looks good for you. This lets you zoom in actually quite a bit. I didn't want to do more than that because you actually get down to seeing individual pixels, which I don't think looks very good, but maybe that's what you want for your game. And the height is going to be clamp for the height, camera height divided by 2, room height. So that right there is going to start to help. Now, if we are to zoom out or in, we won't be able to do too much. So if we do this, that's as close as we can get. You can't go any further. But if I zoom out, then that's as far as I can go. But you start to see that there's an issue. It has now skewed the characters. They're not really square. If you zoom all the way back in, then it works. But the problem is that your room size is probably not going to be equal to a 16:9 ratio. And that's fine. Your room size shouldn't be. The width and height of the actual room really doesn't matter at all to anything you're doing. You just have to take it into account to make sure that your zooming in and out looks good. So I want to have a way that we can zoom in and out and only show what's in the room and make sure our resolution stays correct. So I'm going to come down here and say if the width of our camera divided by the height of our camera is equal to, and there is a specific number that we can actually check here. If we come in and we divide 16 by 9, it gives us this number right here. It's kind of long, but it's always going to be the same. So if your resolution is 16 by 9, this is the number you're going to want. So I'm going to copy that. If your resolution is 4 by 3, then this is the number you're going to want. So I want to make sure that whatever we have clamped to is within this value, or is this value. If it's not, then we're going to move it back to what it was before. So camera width minus equal how much we added, and the height minus equal how much we added. So now if we try this, if it's correct, then it's just going to work. But if it's wrong, then it's going to keep us exactly where we're supposed to be. So I can't zoom out any more than this, which is good. If I zoom in, now we're stuck. So I can't zoom at all right now because I have clamped my values and they are not equal to this anymore. Even after doing this, they are not equal to this value. And the reason for that is the room width and room height. They are not a ratio of 16 by 9. And again, don't change your room width and height to be the same. Instead, we have to come up with a way of knowing what we actually clamped to. Because when we clamp the width or the height when we're zooming out, we can clamp down, maybe we lose 20 pixels here and only 10 pixels on the height. And then all of a sudden, our calculation is completely off. So we need to have a way of knowing how much we lost. So I'm going to make a couple more local variables right here. I'm going to say previous width is equal to the camera width, and var previous height is equal to the camera height. Now what we can do is check these when we're also checking this. So I'm going to add an and sign here and bring this down so it all stays on one line. And what I want to do is check two different things. So I'm going to put this in another parentheses. So if previous width is equal to camera width, or previous height is equal to camera height, then we can do this. So this is kind of confusing. It took me a while to figure this out, and looking at it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So here's what it means. So if we come in and we look at this, we have to be a 16 by 9 ratio, and the previous width and the camera width, remember we save this here, and then we clamp the camera width. If they are the same, or the height is equal to the camera height after it's been clamped, that means that one has changed and the other one hasn't, and we don't want that. So as long as one of them is equal to it, then we have a problem, and the next time we zoom, we're not going to be able to zoom anymore because it's been messed up. So we need to subtract the previous width as well as what we added to it. So down here in the else, it equals to previous width minus the add width and the previous height minus the add height. And if we do that, now we can zoom in and zoom out and not have to worry about seeing too much or getting a ratio that doesn't fit. So you can zoom just like that. Now we still have the problem of being able to see outside of the scope of our game, which I don't like. So we're going to fix that next. Inside here, we need to fix the position of the camera, because the camera is actually what we're moving inside of here by changing the width and the height. We're not adjusting the camera X and Y, and we have to take that into account. So I'm going to say camera X minus equal the add width divided by 2, camera Y minus equal the add height divided by 2. So whatever we're adding to it, we should be moving the other way and making sure that we can't actually see outside of the room. But the problem is that this still can, depending on which side you're on. So if you're on the left side and you zoom out, I think, or zoom in, you'll be able to see it. So if I zoom out here, I can see that. And if I come over here and I zoom in or zoom out, I can still see it there. So I have to actually check that these get clamped properly. So I'm going to say camera X equals clamp of camera X 0, and I don't want it to go beyond the room width minus the camera width. Same thing for the Y. I'm going to clamp this here, 0 room height minus camera height. So this is going to ensure that our camera X never sees outside of our room, because if it does, I think that looks terrible. But with clamping, it's not going to anymore. So I can come over here, and now I cannot see outside of my room at all. If I go to this side, I can zoom out, and I still never see outside of the room, which I think looks much, much nicer. So that is how we zoom in and out with a mouse wheel. Again, if you don't have a wheel, all you have to do is just put in anything else, any 2 keys or 1 key, and just check to see if like up arrow key is pressed, then, you know, wheel set to 1.1. If down key is pressed, then it's negative 1.1. Not a big deal, you just have to change that. But if you have a mouse wheel, it makes it really easy because it's very intuitive to the player. So that's this whole system we've got. It's a little complex and a little wordy, but I'm really proud of it because it actually works very well. So I hope that's helpful to you and that you can use it in your projects. If you liked this video, please leave a like. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more content from me, then hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. That way you'll be notified when new stuff actually does come out. If you want to see some GameMaker courses that take you from beginner to expert, check out my website at letslearnthistogether.com, where there are 3 awesome courses custom tailored to beginners with no coding experience all the way to expert. And that's what I've got for you today. Thank you for joining me, and as I always say, keep making, keep learning, and I'll talk to you later. A huge thank you to all of the awesome people who support me over on Patreon. Their names are on the screen now, and every dollar pledged helps me create more awesome content. You can support me for as little as $1 a month and get access to exclusive perks like my Discord server, your name in the credits, early access to my YouTube videos and courses, and more. Check it out at patreon.com/letslearnthistogether.com or find the link in the description below and become a patron today.